Hey, it's
Hey,
what?
bud. How you doing?
Daniel, man, I have to say, I bring a lot of people on here that
And I'm one of
I'm,
them.
you're one of them, but I'm not grateful to those people because they just played music I like. But you made something that changed my life 2 weeks ago. It's so incredible.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. That's very kind.
Dude, I mean, I really went in the last 2 years with my rig. I went from like a pedal guy to
Mm.
like one of those purists that just like was using less and less things because
Sure.
it was just affecting my playing. And the first thing I noticed about the G2 was the moment I had it after like 2 days of going full like Homer Simpson in the garage, just ruining my hands making cables, which I'm not like accustomed to at all. But like I
Hmm.
plugged it in and it was so clean. It was just like,
Mm.
it's exactly
Yeah.
just like plugging through like a boost into an amp. Like each one of those loops, it just, I don't know, for me, like if it feels right, really, it's not even like a sound thing. It's like
Yeah,
it,
sure.
it's like you just get to feel your amp. So
Mm.
how did
Mm.
this come about for you guys? Like when did you start thinking this up?
Oh, man. So I was working on this originally when so the story goes, I was been a professional guitar player since I was like 17.
Hmm.
Um, and I studied music and all that stuff. And uh, I started touring, but I didn't come from a family of classic rock. You know what I mean? I didn't have a dad who listened to Zeppelin. I didn't have any idea of what constituted a great guitar sound.
Hmm.
And I always thought that technology, state of the art, meant it had to sound better. So I was constantly buying the newest, latest thing, thinking that, well, this surely has to be the best sounding thing,
So
right?
you're showing after the gig with the Zoom.
I'm up. Look, I've got a Roland GP8. You know, one of the first rack units. And and one of the great things about that unit, because I went from there to having, um, the ADA preamps and all that stuff. But it was all MIDI'd,
Uh-huh.
and it sounded awful. But one thing that it did have is that I could program sounds,
Uh-huh.
and a lot of the music I was touring, um, that was quite involved sonically. So I'd
Right.
have to go from one sound to another sound to another sound quite quickly. And then I was working with a producer in Australia, and I bought in all my rack gear, and he bought in this box of old pedals. And I thought, what are you doing, man? It's so old. And then he plugged in an Electric Mistress into a deluxe reverb, and my life changed. And I sat there with this thing on the floor thinking, this pedal's from 1976. How does it just, my stuff doesn't even compare.
Uh-huh.
And I just felt connected straight away. I felt connected to this sound. And I just had one of those moments where I'm going to have to rethink everything and start from scratch. So I went straight down to a music store in Coogee, which is in Sydney. And I dumped $1,500 on a bunch of old effects. And even then, it didn't buy me a lot. I got my CE1, I got a Phase 90, I got an old Tube Screamer, which I didn't keep. I didn't get on with it,
Uh-huh.
and a fuzz, and an old Electric Mistress. And I just fell in love with these sounds, and then got into analog delays and all this sort of stuff. And these sounds, they were so inspiring, and I just felt so connected.
Right.
But the issue was, there's two main problems. One problem was I couldn't just go from sound to sound. I
Yeah.
had to start
Tap dancing.
jumping around all this stuff. But the other thing was, if I had a pedal and it was on and it sounded great, fantastic. But if I had more than two or three plugged in together, that sound, that connected feeling just went.
That was my issue.
Yeah, yeah, and
I had to get rid of the Mobius from my
right,
chain just because when it wasn't on, I just noticed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I I I, I get along really well with the Strymon stuff, the Timeline and Big Sky, but the Mobius I never connected with,
Hmm.
and it's because it's a modulation thing. It's that 100% digital, and I'm not saying that digital is bad because some
Hmm.
digital stuff is great, but that's just the one thing I never really connected with. Um, to me, I find an analog dry signal is very important because I run a wet dry rig,
Hmm.
and if I don't have a direct analog signal going to both amplifiers, I get a phase issues between them. So that's
Hmm.
an issue.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I saw that episode, so I know
oh,
all
okay,
about it.
right, there you go, there you go. So I started, as I was looking for solutions to my problem. I needed something that would bypass these pedals out of the chain when I didn't use them, but also to be able to program them so that I could turn some things on and some things off. The other thing that was a big deal was a lot of the old vintage pedals, when you turn them on, the signal would drop, and not by
Hmm.
much, but just enough to bring you out of the mix. And so I thought, okay, I've got to be able to program combinations. It's got to be proper bypass, because some things say there's bypass and then there's bypass. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So it's got to be, the bypass has to be perfect. But then I need to also be able to manipulate levels on the
Right.
output.
The pre-gain, post-gain thing was just,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
that's really like,
But the need for that stuff, you only get to that from experience.
hmm
You know what I mean? As in, if I didn't have this experience with these old pedals, I wouldn't know really the need for this. But now it's there, and I can use all my old stuff, and I can balance the levels up, but when I want to go straight from the guitar to the amplifier, I hit a button and it's there.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I have ideas too, but you made a machine. Like,
yeah.
how did you make the machine? How did this come? Like, it's perfect.
So, oh, bless you. Well,
Yeah.
it's. So, I tried to get the business off the ground in Australia,
Uh-huh.
because I'm not an engineer. I started doing courses in electronics because I knew I wanted to build this thing. So what happened was I started looking for something that would do this, and there was nothing.
The closest would be like a Bradshaw rig.
Well, a friend of mine was the guitar tech for a famous Australian guitar player, a guy called Johnny Diesel.
Hmm.
I think his real name's Mark Lazotte. Amazing guitar player, and he had this Pete Cornish rig.
Hmm.
And my mate had never done MIDI before, and he needed a few things, patched on it. So he gave me a call to come and work on this rig. And here it was, this incredible rig that had all these old pedals plugged into it, and the bypass was perfect, and it could control the levels. I'm like, this is amazing. This is it. I think the cost of that rig at the time was like $100,000. It took 6 guys to lift it. But it was incredible.
I bet.
You know what I mean? It's Pete Cornish. He's a genuine hero of mine. I think what he's done for the guitar industry, and the level, the bar that he has set
It's very high.
and that's important stuff. So if I didn't have that sort of money, you know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
what am I going to do? And then this producer I was working with, a guy called Paul DeComo, he says to me, well, just go and make it yourself. And
Yeah.
I went, all right. So I started learning electronics, and because I knew I had a real picture in my head what I needed it to do. And so I started getting into it, and I got so far, and then I started talking to engineers. And there are a couple of guys in Australia, but I think the difficult thing was, I was already playing for artists in Australia, and it was a difficult sell for me talking to guys. It's like, well,
Hmm.
you're already doing your thing. Why do you want to get involved with? It was a bit weird.
Hmm.
Anyway, fast forward a few years, I met my wife in Australia. We moved to England, and because of the proximity to Europe, and it's just easy to get around. Like Australia is very far away.
Yeah.
You know,
Isolated.
yeah, it is. And I love it. It's beautiful. But things changed when I got to England. It was more. England is more accommodating to the eccentric, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A lot of
You have an idea and things start happening.
Well, yeah, there's a network here that makes that possible. And so I started talking to engineers, and I probably talked to about 20 different engineers until I got to one guy who was an engineer but also played a bit of guitar. So we had this crossover language where I played guitar and knew a bit of electronics. He knew a lot of electronics and played a bit of guitar, so we could communicate these things. And we started a company, and the first product was released in 2004, so that's 15 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah,
idea.
Exactly. So it's been going a long time, and that the first product was insane. So if you
What would be the difference?
Well, it was
because
it
just
was
went one
massive.
up.
So exactly, it was the G1. It was called the Pro 14, and it's this massive unit. It was and it was white. It's like I wanted something that looked like a prop from Star Wars.
Massive, like how big?
It's huge. It's yeah, it's crazy big.
And it does the same thing essentially.
Well, essentially, you could you had 14 presets, right? You could program it. The bypass was great, and you had a programmable gain control on there. And that's the difference, because being able to do that.
But it was just pre-gain.
No, it was post-gain.
Post-gain, okay. Just
post-gain. So the idea was, as soon as you start going pre-gain, you start changing the gain structure. If you're going pre-gain into an overdrive pedal, then it compresses differently. But if you have enough input, enough headroom, and have the gain on the outside of it, then you're not changing the tonality of the pedal. You're simply changing the level.
Right.
And
so
if
we think about it like water, it would be like a lot of water going into your pedal, making it go crazy from the other side, and having the pedal compress rather than the pedal magnifying it into the amp.
Perfect. And water's a really great way when you're thinking about electronics.
Right.
Because it reacts very much the same. So that was the first thing, and it was in 2004. But we released it, and I thought, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to quit my day job and go full time.
Took a minute.
It took a long time, because we weren't releasing another overdrive pedal. You know what I mean? We were releasing something that didn't make a sound.
Right.
Right. It was expensive and didn't make a sound. It's like, well, why do I need it?
Well, the only people I think before that would have a Bradshaw system or something like that were people who were playing live a lot in a very demanding situation.
Yeah. And they had to. It's one thing to explain what it does, but until you experience the difference, you don't really get it. So Mick, a really good example is, Mick, like Mick's family is one of my closest friends. We've been doing that pedal show now for 4 years. And I built his rig for him after the first year. And, Mick, he had already reviewed the G2 and, loved it. But until he experienced it with his rig,
he didn't get it.
He got it, but he didn't fully comprehend the difference it makes.
That was my experience last week. I plugged it into my amp at a show. We didn't have a rehearsal. We were playing a theater, and I was just like, no. Wow. And it's, I got the board from Martin Schmidt, and
lovely.
And I ordered the 450, and as soon as I finished building it, I was like, I should have gotten a bigger board. That was my first thought. I was thinking, it's like, okay, I like a few pedals. I would like them to sound better, but then it was like, I like all the pedals again.
Yeah.
Because it's possible to use them.
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, I've been amassing. I don't like to think of myself as a collector of pedals, but there are so many amazing sounding pedals out there. It's really a wonderful time to be a guitar player,
Really?
because the sonic choices that you have at hand are so vast that if you can be bothered to go through it, you can find your sound, and that's the, you know, and I love that. And I think with the thing with G2 is that it takes all the other questions out. It's like, find the pedal that you really like. Okay, it's going to sound like that in the system when you have plug into it. Then when you stack it with other things, it'll do what it's meant to do. But it takes away the loading of, you know, everything else around it, you know, and all the unwanted buffers and all that sort of stuff. But again, it's, you know, it's fine explaining that to someone.
Yeah.
But you've got to hear the difference in your own rig, you know, and that feeling of being really connected.
Yeah, to me, it's like also like the spillover with the delays and the verbs. That was just like, I mean, the fact that it just does it, you know, it's like, I mean, I was just turning things like, I mean, I was like, oh my God, like, it's just like, it's like it's really thought out. I mean, that was, but it was like the thing that's, when you get things that aren't made by people who play, it's so clear. Because they don't think about just the musical situation, right? And,
of course.
And you're just in this thing, and I don't know. For me, it was just like controlling the MIDI. Just everything was just worked out for us. You know, it was just very plug in and play, which I just really, really, it was appreciated.
Oh no, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm really glad you're happy, mate. That's great.
and also like the way you described the water metaphor for signal flow. I talk a lot to my people about picking and about the right hand playing guitar. So I just want to let all of you guys know that you know, it's true that it's water, but you got to have a functional sprinkler.
Can you actually, just while we're here, because I've been watching your videos, because I must say I'm new to Marbin, and I've been absolutely blown away.
Oh, thank you.
How did you get so accurate and smooth with your right hand? I mean, it is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And is there?
Well, let me. I'll just.
Sorry, guys, I'm hijacking this interview because I want to see how it does this.
So there's two. I mean, I grew up playing fusion. So there's two kinds.
Sorry, I love that. I grew up playing fusion.
Yeah, I grew up.
I grew up playing blues, or no, I grew up playing fusion.
I really grew up playing like Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson kind of stuff.
All right.
Yeah, we were the opening band for Alan's thing for like 2012.
No way! Yeah. Oh man,
you should have seen his rig. That was I still have it, by the way, in my house. He left the amps after that tour.
Wow.
And he ended up passing. But the Hughes and Kettner thing. But yeah, so
I saw him in Sydney at the Harbourside Brasserie, and that gig was certainly a pin in my roadmap of being a musician. It's like, okay, so that is possible.
Yeah.
You know, up to that point, I didn't know playing like that was possible.
Oh yeah, he was something really, really different.
But unbelievable.
All these people, you know, the right hand was less integral to their playing. So I had this experience. We put out 3 records by 2013. When up till that point, I was playing pretty much like Frank Gambale or somebody like that, where it's really about the pick slant, but also the angle of the hand. So my wrist was pretty flat, and I was picking pretty close to the strings. But the thing that I was noticing is whenever anybody would give me an acoustic guitar, I would barely produce sound, but I'd use my normal technique, but push maybe 20% harder just to kind of get some sort of volume that was lacking in that technique. But then I realized that what I'm doing, if I actually play the way I play on a Strat, or like, you know, my Source thing, on an acoustic guitar, this is the amount of volume that I would produce, right? If I'm playing just like... my actual picking sound relies completely on amplification and, you know, the kind of compression you get from a tube amp and the diffusion you get from delay. But the kind of sound I would produce would be this. So this is not going to work on an acoustic guitar. So I started studying gypsy guitar. and people like Django and Angelo DeBar. And the first thing that I did was I started plopping my wrist up in the air. So the whole idea is that if you straighten out your hand completely, you don't notice, but there's this thing you're doing right here that you're tightening. So if you loosen this wrist, it just flops like a lady, right? So, right?
Okay.
So
yeah, great.
this is the first thing. That's
Right.
just identifying the muscle that tightens, and then you just let it drop. Now, the moment you bring it back to the guitar, you have this kind of angle happening, and now the motion of picking becomes identical to putting out a match. Okay.
Okay.
Right? So it's not, it's no longer a turning of the wrist, it's a rotation of the arm bone with a loose wrist, using the weight of the palm like a paperweight to get it from side to side. So this is, by the way, like the whole mythology of Stevie Ray Vaughan and how he got that thick sound, the thick strings, all that. It's none of that. It's just the momentum that you get from the right hand. Right? So it's like, it gives you that sound that just has a little bit more motion in it. Right? All the Hendrix things. So for chording, if you're trying to play chords like that, there's a lot of left hand muting involved because you're hitting very vague spaces on the guitar, right? You're hitting a lot of strings. Now, the Gypsy brilliance has to do with the rest stroke technique. So that's how you play each string individually, right? And what you do there is, if you imagine the range of picking, right, when you're picking with your normal technique, as a pendulum swing. So if you think about it like a little semicircle that goes for, like, let's say a Steve Morse kind of picking, or El Di Meola, you basically paint a semicircle above each string and you move it. So the actual tilt of the pick moves from being in a forward slant to a backward slant for an upstroke. Right? With Gypsy technique, it always stays with a downward slant. And the pendulum swing, now just take it and shift it this way. Right?
Okay.
So now your angle, every time you end up, the edge of your motion is resting on the string after the string you're picking. So if you're playing an E string, you end up on the A string. And then the upstroke is that pendulum swing inverted to this spot. So the motion now is this semicircle cutting into the strings at an angle. Now, when you're playing fast lines, right, it's like everything is. So it's producing all that volume. That has that. So everything is winding it up in a semicircle up and cutting into the string like that. And that's the whole thing for blues too. That's the whole idea.
Wow, it's such a pure sound.
It's you get all the attack, and I think a lot of times people, this is the danger of pedals really, is that if you rely on them as the source of your sound, then it's most like, it's like thinking that clothes are going to make you hot.
Sure.
You know?
But you don't want to walk out butt naked, because that's a problem as well.
Absolutely, but
Sure.
like, sometimes you gotta just like put on that tight dress to realize you need to go to the gym.
Nice, very good. Well, see, I think I love this because it's not a binary thing. It's not. Yes, you've got to have music, but then it's like me sat here with Les Paul, and it's like. It sounds great, but until I plug it into an amplifier, no one's going to hear it.
No.
So it's there's
you definitely can take the purest thing way too far.
Exactly.
I think what you did was really take the purest thing and apply it to how I can actually get a pure sound using all the things. Because it's and again, it's like, for me, I think playing acoustic, I was a pedal fanatic, really running all my signal through like this long chain of like 2 pedal boards up till 2013. I started playing acoustic, and I started having a sense of the kind of quick reaction that I'm looking for in my Strat. Because just playing, like being able to manufacture the kind of lines and the kind of evenness in my picking that I always wanted naturally. Then when I plugged in through all the pedals, I could really feel a sense of like
Yep.
latency and
Yep.
just
There you
this
go.
deadness in the sound. And I just started taking things out. But now I feel like I can bring all the stuff back in, and I got to call Martin and get like a big board and, you know, be a
Awesome.
drag in the van.
What's your main amplifier? What's
I play
your?
a Custom Audio Electronics OD100.
Okay.
Yeah. So Scott Henderson got me the deal with the sewer guys, and they got me. That was my favorite one from their line.
I mean, it does sound, the stuff I've heard online. It's like, it's extraordinary, and there's a sizzle in the top end, and it's not harsh. It's never harsh, but it's so present and it's so lovely.
Right. That's so. On the clean channel, I use an RC booster just to get a little bit of treble in the sound, like a little bit more high end in the sound. It sounds very Stevie-ish. And then I use a soul driven in for the dirty sound. I don't know if you've checked out those guys, but I don't.
Yes.
If you want to check, dude, do you know Schroeder amps?
No.
Tim Schroeder from Chicago. Like a lot of people here use his stuff. He's like, I think him and Alessandro are the two.
Oh yeah. I know Alessandro.
It's the highest end amp I've ever played. He has one called the Dozer. I mean, I'll put you in touch with it. It's just it's insanely great gear, but it's like $8,000 heads, you know.
Yeah.
But everything's so thought out and point to point.
I love that.
Yeah,
love that.
but I mean, gear can get to these places where it's utterly unaffordable pretty quickly. But he has some stuff that's like cheaper too. Maybe you guys should definitely know each other. So a lot of the people watching this are musicians, a lot of guitar players, and like a lot of people are obsessed with the idea of endorsements. And I always love having gear people explain to them how many emails they probably get a day about that. But for you, what makes sense when you see like an email from a person who's, I don't know, just being like, hey man, I love your gear, give it to me.
Okay, so I think it's important to be really honest about this stuff. I come at this as a guitar player. I'm passionately involved with the idea of helping people get their sound, right?
Of course.
And then it's still a business, and I need to do what's right because I've got, there's 10 employees now. There are people, I'm paying for people's houses and stuff. It's a small company, but it's a company, and I do get a lot of people asking for. Let me rephrase that. I get a lot of people who will email saying, I love your stuff and this is what I'm doing, and that's great. And if they say, I'd love to play gig stuff, but I can't afford it at the moment. It's unfortunately we can't do that. We can't give things away. Most of the big artists that I work with, I might set up a rig for them, but none of it's free.
Yeah. This is something people need to understand, because I think they have an imagination of you being like Gibson.
Well, the funny thing is, people can look at a product and equate its value to the sum of its components. And so since we've brought out our switching systems, there's been dozens and dozens of copies of what we've done. I mean, and I'm not saying what we did was groundbreaking, because the ideas were already there, but we were certainly involved in bringing this concept to the general public, shall we say. Now, the parts that we use are all great. There are units on the market now. Our components cost more than these things do retail. You know, it costs a lot of money to make this stuff. If you want to do it right, Mick and I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and we went and built a tube amplifier, like a hand-wired tube amplifier. And it's like the money isn't in, you know, the components weren't that crazy expensive, but man, the hours it takes to get this stuff together.
Of course.
You know, and so I got a whole new appreciation for that side of things. But as far as what we do is concerned, you know, we've been the value, and this stuff is expensive to make to start with, but you know, you're not paying for the cost of the components plus labor. You're paying for the years and years of experience to find out, oh man, these buffers really don't work. I need to somehow have a system that gets these out the way.
Of course.
You're paying for, okay, I've gone through, it took that, the post-gain circuit in your amplifier took 2 years to design.
Wow.
You know, to keep it that clean and to have that much headroom in it. You know, that's just not, we're not just plugging into an op amplifier and varying the gain. You know, there's a lot that goes into it. You're paying for the years and years of experience that goes into creating a product like that, and it's the same for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the value is. Now, if you can't afford it and you like the concept and you go and buy a cheaper copy, great, fantastic, no problem with that. But you know, for us, it's about, you know, Jimi Hendrix, he paid for his Marshalls.
Oh, of course.
You know? Of
course.
And so it's like if you can give someone, anyone will take something for free, but there was a, I tried it once. I tried it once with a guitar player that I was really excited about having on board. And it didn't work out until a long time later. I got an email from his new tech saying, oh, I've just seen this, it's amazing. I would like to try one out. And I had to email back and say, actually, he's already got one. I was like, they dug it out, and it was great.
That's hilarious.
But that's the thing. You can, if you give someone something, they don't attach any value to it.
Mm-hmm. You know?
That's
true in many realms in life.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's like, yeah, it's, yeah.
I mean, I absolutely get it. And also, it's like, you know, it tends to be that the kinds of musicians that would make sense for you to bring on could afford it. You know, I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah, it does. I think, but the other side of that coin is that, you know, I'm a musician, and I've, you know, I'm 47 now, and I would say
you don't look a day over 46.
No, thank you, it's very kind. But for most of, man, you know, as a musician, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, really tough. And of course, my heart goes out to people who are doing it with integrity, you know, and I love to be able to support them, you know, when I can, but
yeah, but you're not running a charity. It's not your
exactly,
it's not your role.
Exactly.
It's not your role to support.
No, but
it's your role to build shit that's awesome, where they can play awesome shit.
Yeah, but what I can do is go and make YouTube videos and spend money and that, and sort of, if you guys are really into this stuff, then there's certain things you need to know, and if you grasp these concepts, then this will help you along the way. And I'm not promoting gear. What I'm saying is, understand these concepts, and it will help you connect. You know, we have all been inspired by musicians who are connected to their sound, right? Because when you're connected, you can express. And if you have something to say, that's when it can happen. If you know, so we've got Ed O'Brien on the show today from Radiohead. And Ed's been a friend for a long time. And if you listen to what he has to say, and he's talking about integrity of music and about, you know, having the balls to be yourself, you know, and if you don't have anything to say at that moment, don't say anything, you know. But being in the mindset where you're really being able to create something and just be expressive, and that's what we all have in common. That's what we share. And when people do that, we feel connected to that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when we hear guitar players and musicians who do it, it moves us, which is why we all become musicians in the first place. And the thing with technology and the way that works, especially with gear, because I came from the school of, I started out with crap, but I didn't know it was crap. I had to learn the hard way. And then I found the good stuff, and then I started adding other stuff, and then it became crap again. So, you know, I didn't start out with the Les Paul and the Marshall, you know what I mean? And then, you know, add little things as I went. I started out with the rack gear.
Yeah.
So I learned what it takes to you know, to use all the gear, but still feel connected.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing. I mean, even that's in that example. To me, the most mind-baffling, like, gear journey has been, I don't know how familiar you are with Scott Henderson's career.
Oh, I saw Scott Henderson Hot Licks video.
With the Jufro?
Yeah. That was when I was studying. I'd studied at the Conservatorium of Music in Queensland in Australia when I was 19. And one of the other guy's students had his video. And oh man,
you need to put together his rig, because he has no switching. He has like this thing he made at home now, and it looks like I'll give you his number. It's just like it looks like
I would love to. I would absolutely love to.
Circle. It's just like he's just running everything through it, and it's you know.
But again, the thing about Scott is one of those players that, you know, he can plug into that stuff and still do his thing. I can't.
Right.
You know what I mean? There are those guys who just have it in their fingers. I mean, and you listen to the way that you play. It's like, you know, it's really wonderful to hear you say how great your rig is now. But I'm sure you didn't sound bad last year.
I sounded fine. But it's like, for me, standing there. I mean, the thing, like, you know, I'll go back to the Scott thing and the Alan thing. It's like, Scott, to me, his best musical years was running through probably the worst sounding rigs, right?
Isn't
it's
that funny?
That rack stuff with the speaker and like the Mesa Boogie like power amp that he was using with the Chick Corea stuff. But he just made it sing, and it probably sounded like a patch on a Line 6, like, you know, just cranked up to 10. But interesting. But think about this: David Gilmour, right, when he started using big muffs, they were considered garbage. You know, they were cheap. If you look at the way they're made, those old ones, I mean, look at My Electric Mistress, right,
from 1976. It looks like the circuit board looks like a child's art project, and the child isn't particularly gifted. You know what I mean? It's a disaster. But the thing is, when David Gilmour found that big muff sound, he went, I don't care that this is considered rubbish. I don't. This has my sound in it. You know, a lot of people now poo-poo the DL4, the old green DL4.
Yeah.
You go and have a listen to what Ed O'Brien does with that.
Oh, dude, it's amazing. Those
and it's like
too. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. Crazy. So
this is,
you know.
I had John Etheridge on yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Talking, and
he
was talking about when he saw Eric Clapton play in the early 70s in London. And he said that he had something beautiful to say, because he said that he thinks that talent stays with people, but genius can pass through them.
Oh, yeah.
And he said that there were 2 years where Eric Clapton was playing, you know, into those Marshalls, and for people coming to see him, like, you know, in that time, they were seeing the transfer, like this new instrument. It's hard to explain now, but just the electric guitar, like just somebody singing with all that sustain, like on strings.
Yeah.
And he was like, it was like test driving a brand new vehicle that nobody ever saw before, right? So what you're saying with Gilmour, it's that, like you plug in a pedal, and all of a sudden you find a shade that you really feel is like, you know how to, okay, I can drive this car. It's not about all the possible sounds. It's about this one right now.
Of course. And also to remember that, especially in the situation we are now, you might find a really considered, really crappy pedal. And if you put it on your board, you know that all the gearheads out there are going to go, oh man, what are you using that bit of junk for? But it's having the integrity and the honesty to say, no, you know what? I feel really connected with this. I can say something with this. I've got, where is it? It's a pedal that I've been using for years. It's
Which one?
It's a synth bass Digitech.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Bass thing, right? It's the green thing.
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's just awful and horrible. Oh man, it sounds incredible. I love that thing.
Yeah.
And,
well, if you have it in an isolated loop, there's no reason not to use a
shitty
pedal.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Yeah. But I love that. I love that conversation. I love the idea that just finding things that connect with you, and then you can build this really personal thing and start painting pictures and start creating colors that are yours.
The danger that is always present, it's the Peter Pan story. It's being addicted to potentiality as opposed to actuality.
Yeah.
So you can stand above all your sound as a collector of sound who never paints a picture, but that's not the point.
Because you can have, that's right. If you've got nothing to say,
right,
you can have the best colors in the world, but until you actually put that to canvas, and this is why. So Mick and I are doing some gigs. We had a gig last night.
I saw that. You guys do like the pedal show band?
Yeah, pedal show live. And we go out and we do it. And we played all these songs, and I'm still writing, and the drummer from the pedal show band and I are doing a project at the moment. I was in a band called Tin Spirits for 10 years up until a few months ago.
Nice.
But I think it's really important that even if it is just getting together with your mates and having a play, or just getting in a room and turning up and feeling it and playing something, it's expressing what you want to express on your terms. But that's being creative, and that's what life's about, isn't it? Having
Yeah, it absolutely is. That's the spirit of it. Yeah, man. Well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I just want to tell everybody, like, the G2 is the shit. I got it. I got it like 2 weeks ago. It came in a small, beautiful pedal board, and I just like opened it up, and I was like, okay, let's try this out. And immediately, it was so like, the thing that got me first was how it saves patches, because I was like, where's the save button? And I was just like, like just like and it's like, for me, I have that OD100, so it does my channel switching and switches the boost on my dirty channel. So I mean, I don't know, I literally had the most relaxing show of my life, because I don't use that many sounds. I use like, more than most people. I use like 8 or 9 sounds. And I didn't even use like the pedal mode yet. But I just had all my presets. It was just like boom, 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 boom.
That's great.
And like these moments in the song I just realized how much I was so used to doing the dance that I didn't know how much mental real estate certain sections in songs were. But I mean, I'm going to have to start like playing a bass drum and a hi-hat with my feet now, because I'm not going to have anything to do there.
That's great. Now, listen, it's been a real pleasure to meet you, and I'm thoroughly enjoying your music. Are you ever going to do you get to the UK at all?
We've never played. We play in the US like 250 nights a year, but
wow.
Yeah, we're playing in Canada and Mexico, but we hope to get there this year. We had an invitation to Germany, so hopefully we'll put something together.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, do let us know.
We'll be in
And keep in
touch.
touch.
And
I'd love to come out and see you.
absolutely. And I'll send you the contacts for those people I mentioned.
Oh, bless you. That's very kind.
Thank you so much for
Cheers,
being
mate.
with us.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
Talk
Bye,
to you
everyone.
soon. Bye bye.